handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality in general.
How in the century you have slurred the meaning of the words we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
All right, welcome back, everybody. 45 after the hour. Time for us to get into Kevin Sabet's pathetic spin of marijuana election night 2014, which was by all accounts a resounding victory for progress in ending adult marijuana prohibition. I've oftentimes said that 2012 with Colorado and Washington were the jabs, the 1-2 jab that got the attention of prohibition. And then in 2014, Oregon and Alaska and Washington, D.C. are the body blows that have left prohibition staggering. And coming up in 2016 with California, Nevada, Arizona, Maine, Massachusetts, Vermont, and Rhode Island, it'll be the knockout punch to adult marijuana prohibition in this country. That's great news for all of us here at 420 Radio and all of our tokers, tokettes, and non-toking lovers of liberty who listen every day. But it's bad news if you're a prohibitionist. So I thought it'd be interesting to check out the website of Kevin Sabet's Project Sam. You can find it at learnaboutsam.com. You'll probably be giving it more hits than it normally gets, but hey, it's fun. Let's gloat. At Learn About Sam, Kevin Sabet, who's the head of Project Sam, and it's the national anti-legalization think tank that they formed right after Washington and Colorado landed those jabs in 2012. Well, if the purpose of Project Sam was to fight against marijuana legalization in 2014, his efforts flopped spectacularly. He went 3 for 3 in losing the legalization battles in Oregon, Alaska, and Washington. And Sabet also got caught fostering a public money for anti-pot propaganda scheme here in Oregon that cost him $18,000 personally and provides a roadmap for activists in the 2016 legalization states to thwart those efforts. Now, you'd think Kevin Sabet would be upset, but knowing him, this election was just what he needed to paint his side as the underfunded underdogs when they go to Sheldon Adelson or the Koch brothers or any of those conservative billionaires to fund the anti-pot campaigns in 2016 and, of course, line his pockets. As soon as legalization was announced in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th U.S. jurisdictions to approve it, Kevin Sabet was out spinning the results. Quote, election results in Florida, 5 cities in Colorado, and 1 liberal city in Maine represented a rejection of retail marijuana legalization tonight, Sabet wrote, just 2 years after victories in Washington and Colorado, end quote. Wow, talk about burying the lead. Yeah, sure. Voters in 2 more states and the nation's capital ended marijuana prohibition, and Oregon and Alaska accepted far more wide open retail marijuana legalization than Washington and Colorado have. But hey, look over here. We beat legalization in Lewiston, Maine. Ooh, yay. Even though you lost it in South Portland, Maine. You went 1 for 1 in Maine, or 1 for 2 in Maine, I should say. Wow, that's really something to hang your hat on, Kevin. Some 12,000 votes in Lewiston, Maine went your way, while about 9 million went our way nationwide. That's really something to hang your hat on. Let me continue. This is also from Kevin Sabet's spin. Quote, voters in Alaska approved retail marijuana legalization by a slim 52-48 margin, while D.C. voters approved the use, but not sales, of marijuana. Oregonians also voted to legalize marijuana by a margin of 54-46. Funny he didn't mention that margin in D.C., where it was 69-31. Yeah, it just somehow got missed in the paragraph there. All right, well, let's take that. Let's take that with what he had to say there. Let's take that. Slim 4-point margin in Alaska, huh? A slim 4-point margin in Alaska. Because its necessary requirement to pass in Alaska was 50%. That meant it was 2 points behind. Right? You needed 50% to beat legalization, Kevin. You got 48%. You were 2 points behind. So, by that reckoning, medical marijuana in Florida lost by a slim margin, since it got 58% and it needed 60% to win, right, Kevin? 2 points is a slim margin, right? So medical marijuana lost by a slim margin. Now, Patrick Kennedy weighed in as well. Patrick Kennedy's quote is, quote, "Although we didn't do as well as we wanted to, these slim margins of victory show that we are beginning to slow the legalization freight train down." End quote. Okay. Let's look at the legalization freight train, shall we? In 2012, the legalization freight train's margins of victory in Colorado and Washington were 10 points, 55 to 45. In 2014, the legalization freight train's margin in Alaska was 4 points, 52-48. In Oregon was 12 points, 56-44. And in D.C. was 38 points, 69 to 31. If we add up all the votes from the 3 legal jurisdictions, it comes out to 983,869 votes for legalization versus 750,236 votes against legalization. For those 3 jurisdictions, that works out to a 57-43 victory, a margin of 14 points. So, 2012, Colorado and Washington, margin of 10 points. You form Project Sam, you spend 2 years beating the drum for anti-legalization, and the result is 3 states passing, 3 jurisdictions passing, and a margin of 14 points. 10 point, or a 4-point greater margin than 2012. Kind of looks to me like the legalization freight train has become a high-speed maglev train, Kevin. Kevin continues, quote, "This was not the complete slam dunk the legalization groups expected. Alaska barely voted to legalize, and several cities rejected marijuana retail stores outright." End quote. Remember, barely is a 4-point margin, remember? Barely voted to legalize. Just like Florida barely lost medical marijuana. And it wasn't the slam dunk we had hoped. Well, Kevin, 3 for 3 and a 14-point margin is really more of a hat trick if you want the proper sports metaphor. And again, that barely voted to legalize means that Florida barely voted to reject medical marijuana. And let's talk about Florida for a second here. Let's talk about this. In Florida, medical marijuana won by a 15-point margin, 57.6 to 42.4. It's only that stupid Florida constitutional requirement of 60% to amend that kept Florida from becoming the first southern medical marijuana state by a landslide. Only 16 of 67 Florida counties mustered a majority in opposition to medical marijuana. So please, Kevin, keep crowing about how you got a 42% rejection of medical marijuana during a midterm election in a southern state that featured a disastrously flawed messenger in John Morgan and was the first to include a multi-million-dollar anti-medical marijuana ad campaign. You got $4 million of Sheldon Adelson's money, and the best you could do was 42% in a midterm. Hell, if Florida and Lewiston, Maine are the wins, and a few conservative suburban cities in California and Colorado rejecting pot shops, if that's the best you can do after 2 years of funding for Project Sam, you got another long 2 years ahead of you, Kevin. And the latest spin coming from these guys couldn't be more pathetic. I mean, we're still celebrating the solid win in Alaska, the decisive win in Oregon, and the landslide win in Washington, D.C. This freight train, this maglev, seems to be unstoppable. But a large reason why we won marijuana legalization isn't just the influx of money we had to work with, although that was absolutely vital, as our loss in 2012 in Oregon proved. But we also won because we have truth, facts, reason, science, logic, compassion, and history on our side. But that's not what Kevin wants you to take away from this election, of course. In the effort to shore up their campaign coffers for the knockout election coming in 2016, the prohibitionists like Kevin Sabet are desperately trying to spin these election results in a way to raise some money from Sheldon Adelson and the Koch brothers and any other conservative billionaire types they hope will fund anti-legalization efforts in California and elsewhere. And you'll notice a pattern in this framing. Here's your first one. This is a quote from Patrick Kennedy. "This has been a David and Goliath battle. We were outspent by more than 20-1, but our resolve has gotten stronger," end quote. That's Patrick Kennedy, the drunk driver and OxyContin addict who's a board member of Project Sam. A David and Goliath battle. Now, echoing Patrick Kennedy, and indeed, because prohibitionists lack creativity, they often have to echo each other, Oregon prohibitionist and DUID prosecutor of sober pot smokers Josh Markey said, quote, "This was a true David versus Goliath effort," referring, of course, to the $5 million that was put up on the Yes on 91 side here in Oregon versus the $200,000 that was raised mostly from the sheriffs and the narcotics officers in Oregon. And he ends it by saying, quote, "Money talks," end quote. Now, if you're wondering where Josh Markey came up with this whole David versus Goliath frame, well, look no further than to Kevin Sabet. Kevin Sabet, who cleared at least $21,000 in speaking fees to try to defeat Measure 91 in Oregon, posted an infographic on the Project Sam site reading, quote, "Why did marijuana succeed in Alaska, Oregon, and D.C. last night? Follow the money. Money talks," end quote. So the number one talking point coming out of the prohibitionist side in the wake of marijuana election night 2014 is this frame of David versus Goliath. Oh my gosh, the legalizers are funded by these billionaires and have millions of dollars to pour in. And as Sheriff Tom Bergen said, the potheads don't have day jobs, so they can fight for this all day, right? And the poor prohibitionists, oh, they only got $400,000. And it's so sad they can't fight back. I mean, on his infographic, Sabet points out that $9 million was spent on campaigns to legalize in Oregon, Alaska, and D.C., compared to the $400,000 spent by opponents in those three jurisdictions. Now, on first glance, that would be a true David with his meager slingshot versus the hulking giant Goliath battle. If Kevin Sabet wasn't purposefully ignoring David's Death Star orbiting the issue, known as the war on drugs. The budget for the 2013 war on drugs totaled $25.6 billion. 1 year. $25.6 billion. Large sums of money from that budget are distributed to local drug prevention specialists in the form of educational grants that end up funding anti-pot campaigns that might as well be official no on legalization propaganda. So while legalizers may have banked $9 million of private money in the 2014 elections to promote legalization, the opponents of legalization have had the home court defending champ up 3-0 and a best-of-7 advantage, consisting of over 40 years of government-sanctioned anti-legalization propaganda and a public money budget that's topped $1 trillion over that span. In the late 1980s, Partnership for a Drug-Free America was topping $1 million per day in anti-drug propaganda. The ONDCP spent $100 million on anti-drug ads every year as late as 2007. And even lately, the partnership still bankrolled $100 million in media placements per year. With that perspective, legalizers' $9 million in 1 year looks more like David's meager slingshot, doesn't it? Yeah. There is a David versus Goliath battle, and it's us who are David winning this battle against the government Goliath. I'm Radical Russ. That's all the time we got. Stay tuned for hour 2. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it.